Sometimes a loud threat isn't a display of strength, but rather a desperate gamble, revealing more about the issuer's insecurity than their power. True shifts in the global order rarely announce themselves with bluster. They unfold quietly in the subtle dance of diplomacy and the unyielding calculus of national interest. What if the very act designed to exert leverage instead backfired, exposing a dangerous miscalculation of influence and respect? We're diving into a moment that redefined the dynamics of one of the world's most crucial alliances. It's a story of a stark ultimatum issued by former President Donald Trump to a key NATO ally, and the unexpected, almost audacious response from Canada's then ambassador to the USD, David McNaughton, often referred to as Carney. This wasn't just a political spat, it was a masterclass in strategic maneuvering, where the perceived aggressor found their tables turned in a way few anticipated. We'll unpack why this particular exchange mattered so profoundly, revealing not just who won the rhetorical battle, but who truly controlled the outcomes within the intricate web of allied relationships. This isn't ancient history. This episode resonates deeply with the current fragility within NATO and the broader transatlantic alliance. In an era where global stability feels increasingly precarious, understanding how such high-stakes confrontations play out is vital. The implications for collective security, the credibility of international agreements, and the future of diplomatic negotiations are immense. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a stark warning, a preview of how trust can erode and how easily perceived strength can buckle under the weight of misjudgment. The lessons from this confrontation are more relevant now than ever before, as nations grapple with shifting power dynamics and the constant re-evaluation of alliances. To truly grasp the significance of Carney's response, we need to rewind slightly. Donald Trump's skepticism towards NATO was a cornerstone of his foreign policy vision, a consistent theme throughout his presidency. He frequently lambasted member states for not meeting the 2% GDP defense spending target, viewing them as freeloaders on American generosity. This stance often translated into public rebukes and thinly veiled threats of withdrawal or reduced commitment. Enter David McNaughton, a figure of significant institutional credibility, seasoned in the intricate workings of Washington, D.C. and Ottawa. His diplomatic career was marked by a strategic posture, understanding that alliances are built on more than just financial contributions. Previous tensions, particularly around trade disputes and defense spending, had already set the stage for a critical misread of Canadian resolve. The expectation was clear: a public threat, especially from the leader of the free world, would force immediate compliance. The threat itself was unambiguous, delivered with Trump's characteristic bluntness, aimed squarely at pressuring Canada to increase its defense spending dramatically. The conventional wisdom, both in Washington and among many international observers, was that such a direct challenge from the US president would leave little room for an alternative. The expectation was that Canada, a smaller nation heavily reliant on its relationship with its southern neighbor, would swiftly capitulate, perhaps issuing a statement of renewed commitment or outlining a plan for increased military expenditure. Yet, this expectation failed almost immediately. Instead of a hurried concession, what emerged was a response so subtly defiant, so strategically crafted, that it completely upended the anticipated power dynamic. It signaled that the balance of power, at least in this particular exchange, was not solely dictated by military might or economic leverage. Something deeper, something more fundamental about the nature of alliances was at play. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect, sovereignty, and the often overlooked mechanisms that truly hold international partnerships together. The very foundation upon which the threat was issued proved to be more porous than anyone in the White House had imagined. The ground beneath their feet was already shifting, quietly, away from the crude instruments of coercion towards something far more resilient. The hidden mechanism through which alliance power truly functions operates far beyond the public rhetoric and headline-grabbing threats. It's a complex interplay of shared values, institutional trust, and a long history of mutual support, often invisible to the casual observer. While military and economic might are undeniable components, they are not the sole determinants of influence within a mature alliance like NATO. Credibility, for instance, isn't built overnight. It's forged through decades of consistent action, adherence to agreements, and a willingness to stand by partners, even when inconvenient. When a nation consistently fulfills its obligations, its word carries weight. Conversely, when threats are perceived as capricious or self-serving, they can paradoxically weaken the threatener's position, eroding the very trust necessary for effective coercion. In this instance, the structure of NATO itself played a crucial, often underestimated role. It's not merely a collection of bilateral agreements, but a multilateral organization with its own bureaucracy, shared command structures, and established diplomatic channels. These mechanisms provide a buffer, a framework within which individual nations can assert their sovereignty without necessarily collapsing the entire edifice. Carney understood this intricate web. He knew that while a US president can exert immense pressure, the alliance's foundational principles and the collective will of its members also hold significant long-term leverage. The system, viewed from the inside, isn't a simple hierarchy where commands are issued and obeyed. It's a sophisticated network where influence is negotiated and where a perceived overreach can galvanize resistance rather than submission. The real consequences of this exchange were profound, though not immediately obvious to everyone. While the US administration might have believed it was asserting dominance, it inadvertently ceded significant strategic ground. Carney's measured yet firm response bolstered Canada's reputation as a reliable and principled ally, capable of standing its ground even against overwhelming pressure. Diplomatically, it sent a clear message to other NATO members. Defiance, when rooted in principle and strategic understanding, was possible. This subtly empowered smaller nations within the alliance, encouraging them to re-evaluate their own positions and strengthening their collective resolve against similar pressures. Reputationally, the incident had a boomerang effect. For the US, too, the public perception of its leadership became more erratic, less predictable, and arguably less trustworthy in the eyes of some allies, increasing the underlying tension already present within the transatlantic relationship. For Canada, on the other hand, it highlighted a nuanced approach to international relations that prioritizes long-term stability over short-term capitulation. The immediate diplomatic fallout was a temporary chill, but the longer-term consequence was a quiet realignment of influence. The episode served as a powerful reminder that while American power is immense, it is not limitless, especially when wielded in a manner that undermines the very foundations of the alliances it seeks to lead. This wasn't just an isolated incident between two leaders, it was a microcosm of a broader geopolitical pattern, a symptom of a shifting global landscape where the exercise of power is undergoing a significant transformation. We are moving away from an era where raw military or economic might guarantees absolute compliance. Instead, power is increasingly exercised through networks, through the cultivation of soft power, and through the strategic deployment of institutional credibility. This moment is part of a larger trend where traditional hegemons find their influence challenged not by rival superpowers, but by the collective will and strategic resilience of their long-standing partners. The old rules of engagement are being rewritten not with dramatic declarations, but through subtle acts of diplomatic jiu-jitsu. What most people miss in these high-stakes confrontations is the fundamental difference between coercion and credibility. Coercion relies on threats, on the imposition of will through force or economic leverage. Credibility, however, is built on trust, on shared values, and on a consistent track record of reliability. The common misunderstanding of strength in modern geopolitics often equates it solely with the former. Many believe that the loudest voice, the biggest stick, or the deepest pockets inherently command respect and obedience. But this incident exposed the fallacy of that belief. True strength in an interconnected world often lies in the ability to inspire loyalty, to maintain alliances through mutual respect, and to demonstrate a consistent adherence to principled action. This reorients our entire understanding of the episode. It wasn't just about Canada refusing to bend, it was about the US inadvertently undermining its own long-term influence by prioritizing immediate transactional demands over the deeper bonds of alliance. The deepest insight to be gleaned is that while threats can achieve short-term gains, they often come at the cost of long-term strategic erosion. The next confrontation, the next test of alliance limits could be far more consequential. How future leaders choose to navigate this delicate balance between asserting national interest and preserving alliance integrity will define the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. The question remains, have the lessons of this subtle turning point truly been learned, or are we destined to repeat the same miscalculations with even greater stakes? The common misunderstanding of strength in modern geopolitics often equates it solely with the former. Many believe that the loudest voice, the biggest stick, or the deepest pockets inherently command respect and obedience. But this incident exposed the fallacy of that belief. True strength in an interconnected world often lies in the ability to inspire loyalty, to maintain alliances through mutual respect, and to demonstrate a consistent adherence to principled action. It's a strength derived from consistency, not coercion, from predictability, not erratic outbursts. This was Carney's silent weapon, a historical playbook of Canadian diplomacy that understood the long game. His calm, almost understated response was not a sign of weakness, but a calculated display of a different kind of power, one rooted in institutional memory and a deep understanding of alliance dynamics. He recognized that while the immediate threat was loud, the enduring power lay in the unspoken rules, the shared history, and the collective interest that bound NATO together, even in moments of profound disagreement. This reorients our entire understanding of the episode. It wasn't just about Canada refusing to bend. It was about the US inadvertently undermining its own long-term influence by prioritizing immediate, transactional demands over the deeper bonds of alliance. The deepest insight to be gleaned is that while threats can achieve short-term gains, they often come at the cost of long-term strategic erosion. The credibility deficit created by such actions can haunt a nation for years, making future negotiations harder and alliance cohesion more fragile. When a leader signals that loyalty is conditional and easily discarded, they inadvertently invite others to question their own commitment. This incident, therefore, served as a stark lesson in the unintended consequences of unilateralism within a multilateral framework. It revealed that the true measure of a nation's influence isn't just its capacity to impose its will, but its ability to sustain relationships and lead through consensus. The implications ripple far beyond the North American continent. Across the Atlantic, in the hallowed halls of NATO headquarters and in the defense ministries of European capitals, the exchange was watched with bated breath. It underscored a growing anxiety about the reliability of the alliance's cornerstone and prompted quiet re-evaluations of strategic dependencies. Nations began to ask themselves if Canada, a steadfast and historically compliant ally, could be treated with such disregard. What did that mean for their own security? This moment, therefore, became a catalyst for subtle shifts in policy, encouraging greater European integration and a renewed focus on independent defense capabilities. It was a wake-up call, demonstrating that the future of global security might depend less on the pronouncements of a single powerful nation and more on the collective resilience and self-reliance of its partners. The next confrontation, the next test of alliance limits, could be far more consequential. The world is a complex tapestry of interconnected threats and opportunities, and the lessons from this seemingly minor diplomatic spat hold profound weight for how future leaders will navigate this terrain. Will they recognize the value of sustained credibility and collaborative leadership, or will they succumb to the allure of short-term coercive tactics? The question remains, have the lessons of this subtle turning point truly been learned, or are we destined to repeat the same miscalculations with even greater stakes, in an era where global stability hangs in an increasingly delicate balance? The answer will undoubtedly shape the geopolitical landscape for decades to come.